Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show planned out for you here today. We are going to be talking identity and self expression. Sean, we're going to be talking about that stuff. But before we get into what we are identified as, what you should identify as is a like, a subscribe, and a notification bell. That's what you should identify with. And that way, you get an email every time we're online and you get to enjoy the show with us every day. It's pretty awesome times. Couple things before we get into the actual topic of discussion. A, none of us are doctors, although I'm sure Seb will be a doctor soon. He'll just keep going.
Pick up the pace.
Right?
Pace, bro.
And so we're not doctors. Any things that we're talking about, do take with, I guess, a grain of salt, and understand that these are our experiences and what we do and how we live our life. If you are experiencing any sort of issues or need to bounce, feeling triggered, feeling agitated, by all means, bounce, head out, go talk to a professional, go talk to a psychologist, psychiatrist, doctor, friend, whatever you need to do to bring yourself back to regular, and then you can always join us again later. So by all means, any other things that I forget to cover in the first thing and then I remember 20 minutes later? You got anything, Sean?
I just want to maybe identify the fact that over the last couple of weeks now, I feel like we've kind of had some knock it out of the park moments. And though we're not into this one yet, which we will crack out of the park, for anyone who's just joining us for the first time right now, please do me a favor and take a moment to look back on the body of work over the last couple of weeks. We've had some killer guests and we've had some killer topics, particularly in Men's Mental Health Month being June. I feel that the topics we've hit are really, really relevant to a lot of guys that I know, so and myself included. So please take the time to review what we've covered. And on that note, Chance, I just want to get this admin point out of the way. Maybe you could create like a little rock concert poster that just has from June 01 all the way down each day and just list each topic. Right. So that there's 15 whatever, however many, 16 topics listed that are easily on June 3rd they did ...
Raj, I can get that out later this afternoon. Right, no problem. Quick little comment, Jason, good to see you. Hello, collective men.
I like it.
There you go. We are collective men. I like that. Just kind of it's like a general identity that we can all kind of adhere to in one way or the other.
Well, how about this? Let me throw a little twist between the ribs.
Let's do it.
So I guess we are kind of collective men, but in a sense, we're creating a much greater collective than just collective men. And I don't think Jason's wife will mind me saying this. So Jason Subcoach's wife contacted me this morning in DM and just said, hey, thanks for everything that you guys do. Jay loves what you're doing. He loves being involved with it, et cetera, and it's been really good for him, et cetera. And my response back was, hey, you know what? It's been awesome getting to know Jay. He's really kind of a great addition to the collective. And I think he's a great dude, but don't tell him because it'll go to his big stupid head. And so, we had a couple of laughs on that. But my point being that this month particularly, there's been a growing phenomenon of more collective men collecting. But it's not just men. There's lots of ladies that are paying attention, even in this month, June. Though they're not directly involved in the conversation, they are involved in the conversation from the periphery. So all the things that we talk about as men is being talked about at the kitchen table in the family home in the evening. So I dig that. It's not just collective men, it's collective people.
I like that. Seb, you got something?
It's a regular warfare, man. War by proxy. A war on mental health stigmas, war on all the things that, we addressed during this month. And everybody along the way is there to help as a result of getting sucked in one way or another. I love it. It's great.
I love it.
It really feels like it's, we're getting to a point where we're able to refine these topics, because a lot of them, I've talked to other people about this, and I've talked to my massage therapist I was talking to today, and I was like, we've hit some pretty amazing topics that no one talks about, like, at all. They talk at it, right? Like, oh, suicide is, it's bad. We need to figure out how to not have this happen anymore. But that's it, right? That's it. Everyone's just talking at it, but no one's really discussing it. No one's getting involved in it, and it's really beautiful, actually, to be able to see the refinement that we've been able to pick out, even in an hour. Like, we don't
Agreed.
have a lot of time, but we've been able to really fine tune some things and remove some stigma and just discuss without judgment, without derogatoriness. I don't know if that's a word, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
I think one of the reasons that we've been able to do it to some degree is because the guests that we have on are confident men this month. Confident enough to be able to have confidence in who they are as their self-identity. They can self-express themselves. And so I feel that it's a matter of choosing the right panel. Not just anyone can have these conversations. And I don't mean to say that in the sense of, if you just haven't had enough life experience, you don't deserve to be in front of the mic. What I am saying is, it's a tough job to be in front of this mic and do it well. And it's not for everyone. It's barely for me. And so the right person or the right panel will be able to move the needle on a lot of these subjects. And whether we've been lucky or whether we've carefully crafted it is immaterial. The fact remains that every day the panel has crushed it. So I'm really stoked about how the conversations this month have continued to refine themselves, so that we're more and more openly transferring knowledge between each other and openly speaking about our experiences and some of the low rent wisdom that we may or may not have.
I like that. It's well put. Now, Jason just hit us back. It's truly an honor, fellas. It's actually our honor.
It's our honor. Yeah.
100%. Like, the fact, and I get this actually quite a bit from the guests who will, I reach out afterwards and I thank them for being on, and I appreciate them being here. And almost to a T, everyone has said, no, honestly, it has been my pleasure being there. And then we have this little, like, who's enjoyed it more kind of deal. Like, it was, I really enjoyed it, and it's just back and forth. But it's kind of hilarious. But as you said, it allows us to pass on that information, not just within this small group, but to the internet.
Yeah, and that you just made a super important point that I don't think has ever been stated before. I don't think I've ever heard you say it out loud quite that way before. We've got some real characters that show up here, like some really kind of, I don't want to say powerful men. I want to say notable men. How about that?
That's a good way.
And some of the characters that show up, like, I would never expect any of them to say, wow, like, I really enjoyed being on the show. I can't wait to come back. But that's the imposter syndrome kind of kicking in to some degree. But I think it's really important that you said that out loud, buddy, because I need to hear that from time to time, that guests are enjoying it so much that they want to come back rather than I want them to come back. Of course, I want them to come back. But now that I know it's a two-way street, it feels better,
Yeah.
It's excuse me, mutually beneficial, right? You surround yourself with challenges, with savages rather, but you want it to be mutually beneficial, and that's exactly what this has all been. I mean, we've been growing through those conversations over the last couple weeks, especially, just based on the depth at which we dove into, but also based on the depth and breadth of experience of some of the guests that came on, that just brought new lenses to our already sort of, oh man, it's exciting.
Good.
There's so much ahead. There's just so much work.
Yeah, and Chance, you'd said that you're talking with you said massage therapist, I think.
Yep.
Well, yesterday I was seeing my osteopath, and during, it's a 75-minute long session, and probably 3 times during that session, I called out 3 different potties or podcasts from the collective where she had, mentioned something about a friend who ... Oh, well, we had a session on that just about a week ago. It was on blah, blah, blah. And, next subject. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe if you check out the start of this month. And so yesterday, in fact, I think I put a screenshot up. Was it last night or this morning? Anyway, a screenshot of a young fella who just started following me recently. He had a bunch of questions. And then it was kind of like, well, how do you deal with stress? And I said this to you, Seb, right a long time ago. I said, man, I get hit with a lot of great questions. And the way I am is I want to help everyone. So I'm going to pour myself in, even some dude that I don't even know how to spell his name. I'm going to try to be helpful. But, it's a tidal wave of help. And it was starting to bury me to some degree where I don't want to say so many people, but enough people were contacting me and I was putting myself into so many people. I couldn't keep up. So I believe I said to you, Seb, a long time ago, I got to figure out a way that I can redirect people to the things I've already said. Well, holy moly. Last night, that screenshot, how do you deal with stress? Check. This month is Men's Mental Health Month. And if you go back to January 12th, where we covered blah, 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 stress and anxiety, etc., check it out. Let me know. Give me some feedback once you've listened to the episode. If you've got any further questions.
And you know what it does? And I do this as well, Shaun, even if I direct them to other podcasts that are, completely unrelated. But what I like about that is it also establishes their will to work for 100%. Something. It's not, they're not after instant gratification. They've done a bit of work. They found you. Then they do the work of listening to the podcast, whatever the case may be. If they come back to me with additional questions after that weren't addressed in the podcast, I'm all over it. But
I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too. And if they don't, they either one of two things. Yeah. They got all the answers they needed, or they just bounced because it was difficult. There was 2 hours to spend listening to a podcast,
I want to be in JTF too, but I don't want to listen to a 30-minute long podcast.
So don't waste my time. I'm not.
Yeah. Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So I got one comment and then we'll dive into the conversation here. But Octavian says, to our point, I talk to my girlfriend about the topics here nightly after the baby goes to sleep. Could not be more grateful, gentlemen. A buddy is listening to the Imposter Syndrome chat on his way to Ottawa right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Fantastic.
Boom. That's exactly what we're looking for. And to your point, initially, when I first started podcasting, one of the things my wife said to me, actually, that was I started to get, I'm 30 or 40 podcasts in, I'm starting to get tired and, it's kind of hard and editing kind of sucks and all these things that, all the voices in your head start to go at it. And my wife was like, it's not even about them. It's not even about the guests. It's not about you. You are laying down a repository of information for your boys at a bare minimum. But on top of that, all of that information that you're laying out, you're giving it to the world. And the world will benefit more from doing that. And to the point of the identity, what Jason said earlier, collective men, we are a collective. We are society. We are the unit. We are the whatever. And it's up to us to direct the change. If we see something we don't like, it's up to us to change it. So let's get into identity and self-expression, because I think this plays directly into it. Is as a collective, how do we want to identify? How do we want to present to the world? And that's a very big question that I think many people don't ask themselves at all, let alone.
Well, I am going to cheat. I'm going to draw it back to how I want to title it: self-identity and self-expression. And I know that the title is correct: identity and self-expression. I'm not going to push it way out off to the side and never talk about it again. But I'll start with self-identity and self-expression. And so I feel and drawing back on what Jay said of collective men, in order to be part, or in order to identify with a group called collective men, in order to identify with a group called force men from the 1st Special Service Force men, in order to identify with any righteous or legit group, first you've got to self-identify. You've got to identify who you are and what you're joining and what you're going to add to that identity, that group identity. First, you got to know you in order to know what you're stepping into, in order to know why you're stepping into it, in order to know what you're going to add to it. Those are all things that you should be asking yourself before you put half a foot into any group. And so, first things first, self identify. Why am I struggling? Why am I winning? Why am I this? Why am I that? All of those questions you've got to figure out for yourself rather than figure none of it out. Step into a group and then use the group to start on day zero of figuring out your self identity. Because now you're trying to do two things. You're trying to figure out you and you're trying to figure out the group. And they typically are a struggle when you combine those two things if you're early on the process of improvement. And so figure out you, then figure out what group you want to join into. Does that make sense?
100%. Seb, you got something on it?
Yeah, the same can be said with relationship. Like when people get together with some sort of underlying codependency, all of a sudden it's I need this person to be this person, and I want our lives to be interwoven and all these other things, and it's great. But imagine if this person builds their life and their identity and and everything that they strive for, their purpose, the meaning behind life and everything, and they are on a path, a path of growth, and now they're ready for a relationship to share the moment with somebody else that pulls in the same direction, that has their stuff together, and now you're kind of going, along that way, instead of, okay, let's be interdependent and or codependent rather. And if something happens with one person, I'm completely decimated, I've taken, I'm worth nothing, I'm useless, and all those things. It creates some real bad patterns. So it's not only in the collective, in the sense of being in a team, but also in being with another person, just even one other person. Be the best version of yourself so that you're bringing this to the equation.
100%.
I agreed.
I looked this up, and I just wanted to I want to do this because I think it's important. And I looked up the definition of what identity is, right? And the first one is the condition of being a certain person or thing. The second one, the set of characteristics by which a person or thing is definitively recognizable or known. And number three, the awareness that an individual or group has of being a distinct, persisting entity. And the reason I wanted to hit all those was the fact that if we don't identify who we are at our core, and we enter into something that is going to change us in a way, then that will wrap a veneer around nothing. Like it'll be hollow in the center. And so from my own experience, I didn't really know who I was before I joined the Army. And so when I got that the CAD pad on, I was the CAD pad, right? I was the soldier. I was this. I was identifying with an external thing instead of originally identifying me. And that led to a whole host of problems that we've talked about before over the last while, right? But the trick, I guess, not even the trick, the ability to figure out who you are before you wrap that veneer around you will allow you to put that on and off like a jacket rather than having to chisel it off before you can enter into figuring out who you are, because that's what I had to do. I had to basically strip away the military mindset of being the soldier before I could figure out who Chance was. And I think that it's something that I look at this as the second definition, the set of characteristics by which a person or thing is definitively recognizable or known. That's all I was known by. I was the soldier until I realized that I was much more than that. And once I was able to build that up, that allowed me to express who I was at the core, as well as being a soldier. But it took me 10 years, 10 years after getting out and doing all this stuff. So it's a challenge. Not saying it's easy by any means, but it is something that we all, I think, need to do and experience.
I'll push back a little bit.
All right, hit me.
It's not a challenge, and it's not that hard. Unless you think it's a challenge and you think it's hard. But it's not. because you get to set the velocity. You get to set the pace. You can tell yourself to pick up the pace, or you can tell yourself to slow down the pace. The pace is up to you. So the important part is that you got to make the change. And the change, the velocity of the change is completely up to you. So it never has to be uncomfortable. It never has to suck. It's all under your control. So if you don't know your self identity, if you've never ever thought about who you are, what you define yourself as, or more importantly, as you stated, Chance, what something is observed as. So, in that sense, you're observing yourself, but society is also observing you as well. And so, that self identity piece, if that isn't touched before you go out there and start being part of identitied groups, yeah, of course, you're going to be lost in the mix. You're going to be lost within yourself. But the pace to make the change doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be fun if you tell yourself it's fun. And here's what I'm proposing. If you're starting out on this on day 0 and you want to do better, don't turn it into the suck. It might be suck, but don't tell yourself, oh no, I've got a decade's worth of suck ahead of me. Oh no, I'm never going to start. Because I know a bunch of guys who do that. And Chance, you may have done that yourself at one point because you weren't carefully choosing your language that you're
100%.
speaking to yourself too. The internal dialogue can be soft or hard. It can be good or bad, but we shape it. It's all our minds that are determining those words. And if we're telling ourselves that it's going to be a heinous path forward of improvement, well, guess what? It's going to be heinous. But you can spin that upside down and say, man, I'm stoked. I'm going to go crush this awesomeness that I'm pursuing. It's a game, man. You get to play the game however you want. And if you put your quarter into the arcade game and you hit the button that says suck, well, congratulations. That's what you get. But if you click the other button that says freaking bring on the awesome, well, that's what you get. And so it's a mindset, man. It's really a mindset.
I could not agree more. Have you got any points on that?
Yeah, I really dig that. I really dig that concept. And at the end of the day, if I was to die today and I was writing my eulogy, what would I want it to say? What would I want it to say about me and the person I was? And what would be prioritized on that list? And if any of those things are missing, then I'm doing something incorrectly. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't say RCMP member, right? That is not what I would want to see on there. That is not what I would want to be remembered by. And so there's a few things there. It's easy to let things that are cool and fun and challenging define you. It's really easy to do that, but it's also extremely dangerous. It's also extremely dangerous to be unidimensional, where the one thing that defines you, if anything that is completely external to your control takes it over, you're nothing. That is a terrifying prospect. And so developing all of those multi-dimensional pieces of your personality in various fields is super exciting. If something happens to you and you can't work out for 4 months because you've had a catastrophic injury, you're now developing your intellectual capacity. You're now doing this and this. You're learning a new language. You're whatever the case may be, and vice versa. If something happens and you have, some sort of other impediment, maybe you're working out, you're doing these other things, or you're going gardening, or you have so many layers to your personality, and all of those things combined are essentially who you are. And so now if any of those individual pieces are taken away, it's not a big deal because there's an entire framework there to support you as a person. So that's what I really focused on as I was coming up through, my own career, just to make sure that none of those pieces by themselves, once removed, would sort of topple me.
That's a great point. It kind of goes to, I think what we were talking about the other day was, when you silo your development and you just build on one line and you're just that thing, anything can take you out. And then you have to figure out who you are, or you have to figure out your own identity and self-expression outside of the thing that you had held so dear, or that you had held as your identity, right? And it becomes it can become challenging, as you said, Shaun, or it can be fun. And as you were talking about that, it kind of reminded me that there were lots of times when I was in the Army that we knew we were going into something that was going to suck, and yet we could all look at each other and be like, all right, let's go get some, right? But there were also lots of times that we sat there and be like, oh God, here we go. And we would slog through it. But the amount of stress or the amount of difficulty was very much defined by how much we either were like into it or not. And if we were really into it, didn't matter. You could throw whatever
And
you
by
wanted at
we,
us.
what do you mean?
I mean the team. So
and what was the team?
The team was me and the other soldiers that I was with at the time.
How many?
I'd say at the time 7. So me and 7 other 8 people section.
A small section.
Yeah.
Did you have a leader?
We did, yes.
Did he suck?
Yeah, I was going to say we had a person in a leadership position.
So to my point,
yeah,
there's no way it should have been that. You should have all been like squared away, on point, and ready to get after it. There shouldn't be a moment where everyone shrugs their shoulders and says, I'm not going to do my job today. That's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And so that never should have been allowed. And that lesson that was imparted on all of those men at that point still carries forward to this day within you.
Yep.
And so you have the opportunity to compare or contrast or contextualize against how it shouldn't be done and how it should be done. Some people only ever see how it should be done. Some people only ever see how it shouldn't be done. But you are in the mix of you saw good and you saw bad. Now, it's for you in that moment, not today,
mm-hmm.
but that moment was the opportunity to change that moment in time. But it's lost now to the past. Now's the time to make those changes moving forward or in the present. And so I don't want to gloss over the fact that, well, sometimes we were happy, sometimes we were sad. I don't know why. And things just happen. And no, that's not how life works.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's poor leadership. And by the way, not only poor leadership, that's poor troops, because you bought into the poor leadership and you allowed the moment to suck bad. Yeah. Now, suck is suck. I get it. Sometimes it sucks so bad that you're all looking at each other and thinking, wow, this does suck.
Mm-hmm.
But leadership will sort that out. And there never should have been a time in history where a small section feels like, yeah, I'm just not going to do my job today. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And you bring up a great point in that I can't do anything about that now, right? That the time did happen, but what I can do, especially for my own self-expression and who I am as a person now, I can utilize that happenstance, what actually happened, utilize those tools and bring them forward into my life every day. And I can direct my own self-expression based off of the fact that I don't want to do that again. Right. And so I do this with my boys, actually, when they start going, oh, I don't really want to go outside for a walk. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're going to go for a walk. Let's go have fun. We're going to go look at animals. We're going to see the trees. We're going to have the wind. And I get excited about it. So they get excited about it. And I get to utilize those skill sets from the mistakes that I've made in the past instead of letting them drag me back down into the same mistake over and over and over again. If that makes sense. We do have
cultural leadership. So what you are describing is the culture that you're setting for your boys, for your family, for that day. And, overseas with a small section that was poorly led, your self-identity was, yeah, well, I guess I'm going to suck today. And then the group's identity, not self-identity, but the identity of the group is then, well, I guess we're all going to suck today because we're allowed to suck. And what I'm suggesting is there's self-identity and there's identity. Identity is identifying something that's external to you and thinking, oh, that's a set of characteristics or a pattern or whatever. That's its identity. And so my self-identity gets to play with that identity. And so if I'm telling myself today's the lazy day for the rest of my life, well, I can't then identify a hard charging group of people that I'm going to go just walk right into the middle of and think, now I'm going to identify with this crew. And so the idea being that to draw the comparison to the moment in time that you faced where everyone just kind of, I'll call it gave up. Um, with good leadership, giving up doesn't happen. And then that not giving up moment is reinforced within your own self identity. And then you can carry that forward into the future as the example to other groups. And so you've got to understand what you bring to the table or what you're capable of or how the world actually should work by being a strong man, a strong character, a strong individual who will hold true to what they know is right. And through that, it will create the identity of the group. Looking at the collective as an example, if we all self identify as we're all trying to do the right thing, and then as a group, we all self identify the identity of the collective as trying to do the right thing, but then one of us is absolutely not doing the right thing, well, the identity of the group is being culturally changed by one individual. And so when it comes to self identity, that's just on us, but identity of a group can also be on just one individual, unless as a group, it culturally sorts the moment out.
Yeah, it's funny. I was teaching a leadership course yesterday in Burnaby, and I asked the group. I said, "How many bad apples do you need in your on your watch to ruin the group dynamic?" And they all said the same thing: one. Right? That's all you need. But what I find interesting about what you're saying, Shaun, and what Chance was saying is it had me thinking. You know, when we say surround yourself with savages, and I'm going to try to make sense of this, but when we say surround yourself with savages and you bring the same savagery to the game, now this person elevates the game on this particular piece, and then this other person elevates the game on this particular piece. But all of it is you having that self-reflection and say, I need to elevate my game. I need to elevate. So the problem is if you have a bunch of people that are naturally not like that, they can be led and inspired into doing it on account of this person is saying that I should do X, Y, and Z. But that never comes back. So you're limited by that one person because nobody will surpass him because he's the person that's sort of establishing what the collective identity is. And so everybody else is trying to be kind of like him, but there's no real work being done to surpass him where now he has to catch up. And that is the difference between being surrounded by savages and having a group that's not.
Yeah, you guys have both heard me say it too many times perhaps, but one of my favorite slogans is pick up the pace, man. Frickin' pick up the pace. And it's not because I'm looking over my shoulder thinking they'll never pass me. I'm saying it because I want you to pass me, man. Pick up the freaking pace so that I can chase you for a bit, so that you can lead the way for a bit, so that I can see you start to gap off across the horizon. And I'm thinking, oh man, I really got to get after it. So I don't think so. Self-identity, you can identify within your own world that you are the leader of your own universe as an isolated individual. But the moment that you step into a group identity, now it's your job to figure out how you fit into that group and not get lazy within the group. So let me make a crude point, a crude example where if someone sees what we're doing over here on the collective and they're super excited, they want to become a collective men, individual. Well, the moment that you step in, you got to earn your spot. You got to earn your seat at the virtual table. You've got to stay in the game every day. You don't step in on day one and then sit back and relax and cruise because you're not helping the group. You're not helping yourself. The purpose of a group is to collectively work to the benefit of the group. At least that's what we're doing over here. And so to collectively benefit the group, you've got to do your part to push the envelope. You got to push the pace. You got to pick up the pace so that we can all see all of us picking up the pace. I'm super encouraged to do what I do every morning by seeing people that I know literally picking up their pace that morning, that day, yesterday, every day since I've started to know them. They don't need to go at a velocity that would turn them into an astronaut by the end of the weekend, but you just got to set some velocity to improve yourself every day. And then I'm a fan. Now you're in the game. Now my self-identity is identifying you as a team player within a cultural identity of collective men. Then I'm stoked. I'm never stoked if someone hops in and either cruises or worse yet, starts backsliding and drags down the cultural identity of the group.
I think, Seb, you got something? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
All right. First off, I just want to hit Alan. What's up, buddy? It's good to see you. I got a comment from Dr. C here, but I want to just point this out real quick, is that I think this goes into the concept of self-expression within the group. And that when you enter a group, in order to, benefit the group, you have to understand what you are giving to the group. What are you adding to the mix, right? How am I expressing my abilities, my capabilities to benefit everyone else? And I think that's a big part of it, is because the ability to express yourself, like not just be able to say stuff, but I mean to actually show who you are at your core, that you have your identity, you know who you are, and you're here to add to the group. That's a big part of it. And unless you actually, like we said earlier, unless you can identify yourself first, unless you have the self-identity to then express it within the group, you're kind of behind already. In which case you need to pick up the pace and you need to start working. You need to start doing all the stuff in order to add benefit to the group. And I think that the concept of continually earning your seat is that self-expression of, I'm here to add. And you have to come in every day going, I'm here to add. I'm here to add. Well, maybe this day you're there to add everything you can, but everybody else is adding as well. Therefore, everybody starts to climb, and then that pushes you to add even more tomorrow, and that pushes you to add even more tomorrow. But all of it comes from your own ability to express who you are at your core into the group, and then add to it. You guys got any points on that before I jump on Doc C?
Do you, Seb? Because if you don't, I'll jump in.
I had something and it totally slipped my mind. So go ahead.
All right, I'll fill in the gap until it comes back. So on self-expression, let's talk about that for a little bit for a sec, because I feel like we've talked about identity and self-identity, but not too much about self-expression at this point. Here's the way I approach my self-expression. I think of myself as like, I know it's going to sound weird, but kind of like Miyamoto Musashi with a sword. Like he expressed himself through a sword. I know I'm not Miyamoto Musashi, but I think of self-expression as how Miyamoto did it with a sword, except I do it with a bike. I paint that single track with my bike like a brush. What I do out on the trails, that's me self-expressing to myself on a bike. Same on the BJJ mats. When I'm on the mats, I'm self-expressing to myself. I'm trying to be an artist, not for you, not for anyone else, not for my partner. When I'm on my bike, I'm not doing it for the dirt. I'm not trying to express how good or bad I am on a bike to the dirt. I'm using the world, my life, this universe that we're in. I'm using it to explore my abilities, to explore my ability to express myself within myself, to myself. When I'm riding my bike, I don't ride a bike for anyone else. There's no crowd out there on the single track. It's me and the squirrels. And so when I'm tearing down the track, I move in a way as if I'm painting on a blank slate, as it were. Every ride is different, though it may look the same. To me, I understand the minutia of the paintbrush of yesterday versus the minutia of the paintbrush today. And so as I paint my art, I am expressing myself to myself. Then, when I get home, off the mats, off the dirt, off the whatever, I'll grab my goofy little phone and I'll edit whatever footage I captured of me expressing myself to me. And if I edit it well and put it out to the internet, then I'm taking my self-expression and I'm expressing it out to the group, the cultural identity group that I'm part of. We'll call it the collective, we'll call it Instagram, we'll call it whatever. I'm demonstrating to everyone else, not how good I am. I'm just showing that this is how I self-express. This is me as an artist in the moment. And you too can be an artist. You just have to understand that what I do, you can do. You've just got to go do. So that's why I put up my self-expression videos to the group, as it were. It's not for me. It's to encourage others to go be artists in whatever they're doing.
I really like that, Sean. It captures it really well. If the sword is to, if the bike is to you, to Miyamoto Musashi, was his sword is, what is it for somebody else? The bike is a golf
Right.
club or whatever the case may be.
Indeed.
It really doesn't matter what it is. You know, what I like about this approach is I'm very much the same way. I very artistically self-express, and the reason why I do that is because I have so many layers to my personality that I love to just explore and do things and let things flow. And what's good with that is it becomes very difficult for somebody to come in and establish the parameters around how I self-express. So I'll give you an example of this. If I'm running a class, a jiu-jitsu class, and there's a specific move that's being taught, or we're going over something and somebody has a slight variance of this on account of X, Y, and Z body shape, whatever the case may be, artistic flavor or whatever, I'm all over it. And there's a lot of schools where, you know, like, it's no, this is not the move, like the move that we are doing, but this person is now expressing themselves through the art, which becomes a painting, as opposed to, and a painting, you can't go to Picasso and say, you're not doing it right. Doing what right? I do whatever I want, you know? And so, and yes, of course, we need to balance the need of letting people do whatever, because there are basic principles in the jiu-jitsu, but this is just an example. It's nice when the fundamentals are taken care of, but then at some point the artistic sense is let to be, and it's not being stifled. Because when you're doing this in, say, on the BJJ mats, it may be done in any other area of your careers where other people or the organization you work for or the peers you're with or whoever are going to impose boxes around you, and your sort of predisposition to self-express in the way that you want to, and maybe interfere with that process. And that should never be interfered with. You, as long as it doesn't endanger anybody and doesn't get weird, you should be able to do that all the time, but you should also seek to do that all the time.
Oh, so that's nice. That's a nice little segue into why I'm insisting on we retitle this to self-identity and self-expression. I'll say this, that you know, to self-express requires a certain amount of confidence. And I mean, even to self-express to yourself, if you've never considered the concept of self-expression, it might be difficult for you to self-express yourself to yourself, because you may not have, I'll use the word courage to do it, even though that may be too strong of a word. Maybe the conviction to do it, though that may be too strong of a word. I feel that maybe the main reason is just the lack of consideration of, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can start something and display to myself that I have a paintbrush in my hand in all matters of life. Look at this, what we're doing right now, podcasting. Wow. I'll say something that I'm reluctant to say, because I know I'll have to own it in the future, and it sounds goofy, but this is how I approach podcasting. I'm not good enough at podcasting yet to start self-expressing. Though I am expressing my self-thoughts, I'm not self-expressing right now because I don't have the confidence or the skills or the wherewithal or whatever. Maybe it's imposter syndrome. Who knows? But right now, I can't fully self-express in front of the microphone the way I may be able to do a year or two from now, because I don't have the inner belief, I guess, to just express, just paint in this hour. Maybe I'll get there someday. But the most important part of that is this. I realize that that's what I'm going to try to do sometime in the future. I'm still trying to do it right now. I just don't do it well enough now that I believe that I can do it better in the future, I guess. So I try to self-express in everything I do, but you have to have certain fundamentals in place. You have to have certain confidences in place through time, experience, losses and wins, that you can finally get to fully self-express yourself with full confidence in everything related to that subject. On a bike, freaking get out of my way. I'll express all day long, but that's 20 plus years of hammering. Same with the BJJ, eight years on the mats. I'm not that good, but I know enough that I can self-express. I can believe in my abilities to self-express. There's things like this that I don't have that belief yet, but I do know based on my life that with enough time, enough effort, it will eventually start to show up.
Well, what are the win conditions in relation to what you are actually doing? And if you are reaching some micro wins, you may not have the perfect win, and it's not the perfect plan, it's just a plan. But it's an enacted plan, and an enacted plan develops and it gets better over time. But if you don't start, it doesn't. So it's an interesting dichotomy. I would say that you need even more self-confidence to do that, because the imposter syndrome is real if there are real shortcomings. But if you are out there developing as you are doing it and getting better in the public eye, or doing it for everyone to see, you're now giving them a glimpse of the process. It isn't easy. Everything we see is always the tip of the iceberg, but we don't see the work that's being put behind. So that, I think, is a first row seat on somebody that is willing to go out on a shield in front of everybody else on account of self-betterment and collective betterment. That's a huge piece.
Yeah, it's important that people see that we're doing it. It's important that people also understand that tomorrow I won't want to do it, but I'll do it, because that's what's required. Action. There's no point in thinking about whether I'm going to do it tomorrow or not. It's just going to get done. And so that's an important part of the process, is you have to commit, even if you don't want to commit. Tomorrow, if you don't want to commit, you just got to commit. You just got to get it done. Action every day, discipline, focus, repetition, consistency, all of the good words. You just got to do it. And in time, the results start showing up. The outcomes start shaping into a more positive outcome. But to your point, Seb, most important in this process of podcasting, or what we're doing over here on the collective, for me anyway, personally, as my self-identity, is I want people to see and understand that nothing is particularly easy, but if you commit, it gets easier.
Or you get braver. Yeah, one of the two, right?
Yeah, one of the two, right? That's a good point.
Well, I think a lot of people forget that there's a big difference between seeing someone's body of work and creating a body of work, right? And that there is, if you look at somebody at day one, brand new white belt that steps on the mat in the BJJ world, right? They are now beginning to build a body of work. But that person could look at a black belt and go, "Oh man, I'm never going to get there," which eliminates the ability to build that body of work. And I think over time, it's the daily, every day, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm just going to keep doing this. And before you even recognize that you have a body of work, you've already built one.
Yeah, stubbornly,
exactly. But I just had this image in my head as you were racing through the trees and two squirrels sitting on a branch and watching this bike go, whoa, and somebody goes, "Whoa, was that Miyamoto Musashi?" But so I got a couple comments here from Doxy. I do want to hit on them. They're just fantastic. He says, "It's interesting. Our identity has different personas depending on who we are with / and the environment we're in. It's also interesting to see how, as we get older, our priorities change subsequently. Our priorities change subsequently. So will our identity." I think this is a key point, is that that's part of life, right? You can't be the same person you were 20. I mean, you can be, but
some are.
Some are. Actually, Seb and I were talking about this earlier before we went live, was the fact that, there are people that were in the military for 10, 12, 15 years, and then they've been out of the military for 10, 12, 15 years, but in their minds, they're still there, right? They have not moved past that in order to develop their identity outside of what it is they were going into.
I'd like to give a little.
Sorry. I was just going to say, before you jump ahead there into whatever, the conversation that you and Seb were having, and what kind of conclusions did you draw?
Seb had said, I'm going to wait till we actually go live and talk about this because there's so many points.
Here we are.
So here we are.
I can't even remember what it was. I can't remember my name. So, hey, but just before, because I want to, and it's not, I don't want to call it pushback on Dr. C, because he's obviously Dr. C and a wealth of knowledge. But I want to bring a bit of nuance to this, because for me, when I read this about identify as different personas depending on who we're with, that's you trying to fit in my opinion. And I do believe that it is correct in that different dimensions of a personality will come out with different groups depending on what you're engaged in. And so that I can stand behind. But if you're a different person with each group that you're in, you are trying to fit in. You are not being you. So, I would really caution people against trying to cater who they are to satisfy the group, so to speak, and really embrace having the ability to develop the tools necessary so that you can self-express who you are without being threatening to everybody else every time you do it. And so it's not so much about what you are doing as how you're doing it. That's the piece that needs to be worked on. But ultimately, if you start changing for everybody around you, good luck with that.
Yeah, and what I thought of is, as you're explaining that, the idea that we have our self-identity, we are who we are, but we should be rich enough or broad enough or multidimensional enough that as we flow from room to room of different groups of people in a large building, we'll call it, as you move from room to room and different group to group, you shouldn't be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You should be within your bandwidth of ability to ebb and flow. I'm not going to say you got to be a chameleon, but you've got to be able to step into a new room each time and synchronize right away. That doesn't mean that you change personalities. You just sync with the vibe of whatever that group is. And from room to room, group to group, you just synchronize. You don't have to be something that you're not. You've just got to dial into the group, figure out the synchronicity of the moment, and operate accordingly. So rather than chasing or pretending to be something you're not, just be who you are, but synchronize with the group in whatever fashion you can.
Yeah. He does kick back here. He says, true, Seb. I was referring more to the fact we have an identity as a child, as a parent, as a sibling, as a boss, as an employee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So with that, he's got another one here. Talk about self-expression. Self-expression encompasses verbal and non-verbal means of conveying one's authentic self to the world, such as through art, writing, fashion, behavior, communication style, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking the same thing as you were talking about self-expression and you being on the bike. Was the first thing that popped into my mind was this. This is a perfect example of my own self-expression. Is I enjoy podcasting. I enjoy the challenge of it. I enjoy bringing myself out in these conversations, and I like being able to free flow into a conversation and being able to play with it and be truly in the moment of it. And we can do that through all kinds of different ways, right?
Except fashion. I'm not very good at fashion.
You should start expressing yourself more in your fashion then, I think.
If only I had a merchy t-shirt,
I'm, yep, you're right.
Zing.
On it.
Bam.
So we got another couple comments. Octavian says, I'm linking what's being said to a video I saw, Break the Cycle of Addiction by Ram Dass. He says that finding the ability to self-express authentically is one of the two best forces to fight addiction. I've not seen that, but Seb, you're agreeing with that?
I did a long time ago. Octavian, do you remember what the second best force was? Or you've listed one, but what was the other one? Just out of curiosity.
Best force to fight addiction. I'm gonna suggest something along the lines of changing reward systems, go to internal gratification or something. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, I'm sure he'll throw it up here in a second here. Yeah. We'll carry on, but Dr. C says, absolutely. Action has been shown to reduce depression, and authenticity is so true, Octavian, 100%. He does make a quick point to you, Shaun. Pick up the pace, Miyamoto.
Can you imagine if
Roger that.
if Shaun goes and rides his bike, and in 500 years, 8 million people are watching Shaun's exactly like Miyamoto.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hey,
500 years later.
That's a trip to even start beginning to unpeel that onion.
Look, I'm a big fan, as you know, Shaun, of Pachelbel, the German composer. And some of the songs that I listen to in my car right now while I'm driving around were written in 1689. And I think of that sometimes, and I'm like, where is what's her face, Miley Cyrus going to be in 400 years?
You know what's interesting?
Yes.
Just on that point is that like Mozart was thought to be like a pop artist. They were just like, oh, well, he's just messing with the classics and he's doing all these crazy things. And like,
of course.
And now he's one of the classical composers. It's
one of my favorite composers.
Yeah, he's a great composer.
So Dr. C, one more. He says, I have found people's clothes psychologically fascinating concerning expression, which is a great point. I actually brought this up with my my massage therapist today. I was saying that, you know, what people wear, I mean, we've said this before on the show, is a conscious effort to express how you feel, who you are. And if what you're wearing is separate from your identity, then you're not expressing yourself. You're trying to express something else. That's you trying to, as you said, be a chameleon. You're trying to change yourself for the group.
Yeah, play different roles. And so that's a really important point. And I'll throw this, it'll take me 60 seconds. So if you, and I'm not suggesting everyone has to do this, but if anyone's academically curious, take a look at my Instagram feed from yesterday or the day before or the day before that or whatever, any day, pick a random day. And what you'll see me is in the morning, I'll get up and whatever I'm drinking and wearing first thing in the morning, you'll see me wearing it that afternoon. You'll see me wearing it that evening. You'll see me riding in it. My two live potties yesterday, I was wearing a Pathfinder sweatshirt. So I wore that for 2 podcasts. Then I wore it to go to and then I wore it for the ride. And then I wore it so that's what I wore. And it's just what I threw on in the morning. I didn't plan my entire day and every little bit of social media that I did flippity flopping shirts and hats and socks. And I mean, it's just not me, man. So, you know, if you see me in the morning wearing this, you'll see me riding in it this afternoon. And so I don't carefully contrive my image. I'm just doing me. It's my self-identity that I'm pushing out there as a self-expression. And I'm not so carefully calculated that I'm contriving images, various avatars throughout the day. I'm just doing me with whatever I'm wearing. So if this is fashionable to ride in this afternoon, well, that's lucky. That's coincidence because I'm not fashionably contriving my fashion sense.
But you're also not trying to obtain external validation because you simply don't need it.
I don't need it.
If you're thinking to yourself, I'm gonna wear my Pathfinder shirt today on account of letting everybody know I was a Pathfinder, that's a completely different ball game. You're now seeking external validation from the actions that you're taking. You're not self-expressing. You know, that's very different.
Yeah, and it's so different, buddy, that there's a time when I couldn't wear a Pathfinder sweatshirt because I didn't want anyone to know that I was any of that stuff. So to put it on was a trip. Now to wear it on the regular is a trip. It's all a trip, but you got to get right with yourself. You got to get right with your self-identity in order to self-express out there.
Agreed, man. 100%.
Last comment here we got. Dr. C says, painful thought, Seb. So true, Chance. I think they were talking about Miley Cyrus in
400 years.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Octavian says the other force is that of course, connection with others. The big point is that separation from self-expression and a collective is what causes addiction. So
it's interesting. That's what makes the AAs and the NAs so effective.
Yeah. Peer support, man. This is part of the collective. That's
like-minded community.
Everything we're doing is that we have, again, we as singular identifiable people are expressing ourselves within a collective in order to grow the collective almost. It's kind of crazy how that happens. So we're just about at time. Any final thoughts, Seb?
I think it's pretty much all been said, but you need, I can't say this enough. We as humans, we need to diversify who we are. We need to be anchored in so many different things, and things that are meaningful, and things that we care about, and outside of our work circles, and outside of the same group of people we always hang out with, and have different lenses on things. And the more multidimensionals we are, the less we are hurt when one of those pieces falls apart. And that's, I think, a critical piece moving forward for me anyways.
Sure. Shaun?
I'll end with this, maybe focalizing on the self-expression part. Please, anyone who's listening to this, consider what you feel you're good at, and then express yourself with it today. Shoot a video, take a photo, something that demonstrates your self-expression. I didn't say your self-excellence, just your self-expression. If you're a painter, if you're a writer, if you're a martial artist, if you're a horse jumper, whatever you can express yourself with today, do me a favor, photo or video, push it up to the IG, hashtag mentel.ca, hashtag the collective, hashtag all three of us, so that we can see how this conversation maybe move the needle for some other folks out there to understand that self-expression as humans is so important for other humans to see.
Yeah. One correction on that. Don't hashtag us, at us. That's a different thing. But hashtagging, hashtags work, but do at us for sure. We have all of our things here. I will just remove this so everybody can see it. There we go. At Masscore Burrows, at Slav Commander, at Sean Taylor's one. And then sorry, Salty Jake. Sorry, came in late this one. I'll be rewatching what I missed. Perfect.
Yeah, we're wondering.
Yeah, we were the whole time. The whole time, I was just sitting there like, "Where is this?"
He was busy out there self-expressing himself.
Can we even do this?
I don't even know. But again, great conversation, boys. It's been awesome. I think we've been able to develop and refine a lot of what I think is unrefined out there and underdeveloped, I believe. And it is I look at it now as, I wish I had this 20 years ago, right? Can you imagine having the collective when you were 20 and being able to sit and listen to the hard hitters and the people, the professionals, and the people who have been there, done this, seen this, and then being able to apply that as a 20-year-old and just poof, we'd have a better world, I think.
Oh man.
All right. So as we all learn how to self-express, as we all build our own identity, we can then grow from it and become better people, better men, better collectively as one. So if you want to do that, you can do that here with us every day on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Chimo.